let me know that she will not be making it tonight. We are also joined by Councillor Norton, also from Ward 2. Welcome. Not a member of the committee. By Ms. Fairley, who's the Disabilities Coordinator. Is that what your title, Ms. Fairley, for the City of Newton? Chief Operating Officer Jonathan Yo, who did me the favor of putting his title in the in his identification, makes it a lot easier. Attorney Temple from the Law Department, Sergeant Wade from the Police Department, our clerk Danielle Delaney, and am I missing anyone I should call out?
Not that I see.
Thank you, Ms. Delaney. I'm going to jump right in. I will poll, let the chief poll rank. If he joins us, please let me know if he does, to talk about police data. We will go through some of the public auto licenses. Do I need to read each of these?
Yes, you do. And the first one is a bus renewal license, and Mr. Balin is here from VPNE and Sergeant
Excellent.
Wade.
Okay. Can we take the remaining ones though as a all together?
You can, but there's one new public auto for Ralph Thomas, but I do not see him yet.
All right. If he shows up, let me know. Otherwise, we will leave him out.
Chief Carmichael's joining now.
All right. Then I will read number 6722, annual and comparison data on crime, crashes, hate incidents, 2019 to 2023 to date. Regular discussion with the police department. We've heard this multiple times. January of 22, March of 22, September of 22, December of 22, January of 23, March of 23, and then a hiatus. So this is our last meeting of the year. It is also the last time this year and this term that we will be going over data and crime stats. Chief Carmichael, are you on? There you are. Welcome.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Good evening. Hi, everybody.
We're doing well. I did send out, or Ms. Delaney sent out the sheets of data this afternoon. I hope people have had a chance to look at them. Chief, do you want to summarize things? Is there anything that pops out at you as you're looking at this?
Sure. Does everybody have a copy of the?
Everybody was emailed a copy.
Okay.
Councilor Downs, I can share my screen if you'd like.
If that's something the chief would like, I'd prefer to look at people. I have a screen up and the data up in front of me. If people need the data pulled up in front of them, let me know. What would you like? Hearing nothing, I'm going to go right ahead. Go ahead, Chief.
Chair, can I just,
Yep.
Sorry. My recommendation would be to put it up on the screen because there are folks on this call who have probably not received it because it was not in the front packet. Just my preference.
Fair point, Councilor Lucas. All right, Ms. Delaney, if you would.
Okay.
And go ahead, Chief, and you can scroll through to any of these that you want to start with.
Okay. Sure. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I guess we'll start with the first one, which is somewhat glaring. As you know, in the past calendar year, we've had a total of 5 homicides in the city of Newton. One took place right before the new year, which occurred in 2022. And then you see a couple additional ones here in 2023. The reason why you see 2 is in that particular statistic is because when we report to NIBRS, which is the National Incident-Based Reporting System, you report the incident and not the actual amount of that particular crime that was committed. So that's why you see the numbers are a little bit skewed there.
2 incidents, but was it 4 victims?
4 victims, correct, and then you see the one back in 2022, right before 23, which was the other one. So within the calendar year, we had 5 total. And while we're speaking of this, obviously we think of the families and the friends of those who were suffered from those horrendous crimes. Sexual assaults are down from the prior year, 43% decrease, down from 7. Robberies were also down. We had a 25% decrease, down from 8 the year before to 6. Aggravated assaults have been steady, and residential burglaries, as we know, a couple years ago, we saw burglaries take a significant increase. Those have actually dropped a lot over 2023 compared to 2022.
Ms. Delaney, can you scroll down?
Yep, down 62%.
A little more. No, a little bit up
Yeah, gotta
further,
go back
sorry. Back up to the bottom of the first page. And then commercial burglary. Before you go on, if you could just let us know if there's anything NPD is doing that is bearing fruit here, or is this just, we don't know?
Yeah, it's always difficult to tell. And one of the things you got to remember too is when we're looking at statistics, it's reported incidents, and that's a lot of times we try and do a lot of outreach and encouraging people to report incidents that happen, so that we're actually getting an accurate statistic on what's happening. Some of the things like burglaries and that kind of thing, that some of that's attributed to patrol tactics, but also there's different trends that we see with different crimes. And as an example, you can see with residential burglaries, we were down 62%, but we're actually up 32% for commercial burglaries. And that was what we were pretty much seeing around the whole area, that more commercial businesses were being broken into. We did have some success also in some media coverage over the prior 2 years, when we had some beanies that were taking place at residential, where we made arrests on several of those incidents that actually spanned from all the way down to New Jersey, down to
Wow.
New York, New Jersey area. So commercial burglaries. Total larcenies, those are down. As you know, many of the larcenies we have are merchandise related. So, some of the
Shoplifting?
shoplifting and that kind of thing. So those are down. Car breaks are also down. We saw a trend of those last year in 2022, where we saw a substantial amount of those. Those have dropped. Not 19%. So motor vehicle theft was actually up this
What's
year.
with that?
Yeah, 23 cars, 23 on the motor vehicle theft.
Is that the TikTok videos showing you how to hijack a Kia, or is that more serious?
I hope not. No, usually these are what happens is it's almost a crime of opportunity or need, where many of the motor vehicle thefts that we have are a stolen car used, typically to get from point A to point B, and then the car is basically abandoned somewhere, and then it'll be found usually within a short time period, and just dumped, wherever their place of origin or their place of where they were trying to get to.
Okay.
And then most of these are recovered. Total violent crime was down 7%, despite the issue with the homicide that we just spoke about. Total property crime down 21%.
Chair, can I ask the chief a quick question on that slide?
Absolutely.
Chief, welcome. And what's in total violent crime? Is that what's that the sum of?
Yeah, so total violent crime, like more of your aggravated assault.
So it's aggravated assault, murder.
Yeah, it'd be aggravated assault and battery. Anything, not the sex-related crimes, but the way they'd be categorized is basically anything like an assault. These also don't include the domestic violence stuff that I'll show you here in a minute.
Okay,
Then your total Part 1 crimes is down 20%. Your Part 1 crimes are your more serious crimes, homicide, sexual assault, robbery, breaking and entering, burglary. There's only several Part 1 crimes, so they're basically your more serious crimes, and we had a 20% decrease in overall Part 1 crime this year.
wow.
Pedestrian crashes, we remained steady despite, all of the work that different entities in the city are doing to try and, just address some of the issues with pedestrian crashes. We were at 40 for 2023, really down only 1 from 2022, and we're not done with the year yet.
It sounds like up from 1. Yes?
It's up 1, right? Yeah, 40.
Yeah.
40 this year. We had 39 last year. And also bicycle crashes were 27 in 2022 and 20 in 2023.
And we're not
We
through
are
with
continuing
December.
we did get a lot of our
Chief-
traffic safety grants again this year, so we're going to be taking a lot of our grants and concentrating on some of the higher crash areas. Basically, we'll do in the pedestrian crossing type of enforcement. And different things. We also, with the consultant that we use through the department, we're going to be creating some videos and some like almost public safety awareness type of campaigns over the winter, where we're going to look at some of the crash sites where we're having pedestrian crashes and put out some information relative to what we're seeing, and hopefully bring further attention on the issue of pedestrian crashes and bicycle crashes.
Yeah, I would really appreciate that. Let me take a pause here because we've gone through a lot of stats and see if there are any questions from either the committee or other counselors, just really briefly, because we have a very large agenda and a short night. But I wanted to give people an opportunity. You'll have to raise your hands because I can't see you. Okay, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Malachy, followed by Councillor Lucas.
Great, thank
Okay.
you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Chief. I am just curious, and this is kind of digging into some of the information that's on the screen right now in terms of both pedestrian and bicycle crashes. I assume all of this is, vehicle versus bicycle or vehicle versus pedestrian. And I'm wondering if you have noticed a shift in any particular direction in terms of, are we seeing shifts in which intersections are becoming more troublesome than others, or is it pretty consistent over the past few years?
It's been consistent with pedestrian crashes. We haven't seen a lot of trends where we're focused on any narrowed down particular area, but we do with some of the crashes, the total car crashes. And one of the things that we do is, like when I mentioned the traffic safety grants, we like to take those grants and focus on those areas that we identify as high crashes. And I apologize because I usually bring the more high crash locations. I can get that and I can share that, but we will be concentrated on. I'm sorry.
If you could, I think we'd appreciate it. Am I right? Yeah.
Yeah, we can get that.
All right.
And get that out.
Yeah, and I didn't want to take us off track here, but I was just curious if there was oh my gosh, look at what happened over, totally different, but it doesn't sound like that's the case.
Yeah, and one of the things I always try, I always remind people to be aware of is that when we're talking about pedestrian crashes and bicycle crashes, the first thing you usually think is that it's the operator of the motor vehicle that's at fault. And so a lot of times what we need to do is try and get, and this is what we hope to do with the videos that we make, is get the word out there that it's not only the motorist that we need to concentrate on, but the bicyclist or the pedestrian,
yeah.
and making sure that they're safe and that they're, you know, staying in the bike lanes when there's bike lanes, and that the bicyclists are following the rules of the road just as they're supposed to, because a lot of times when you see a bicycle crash, that crash might have actually been the bicyclist, you know, going through the red light and hitting a motor vehicle, whereas it would still be considered a bicycle crash.
Understood.
So when we do the educational piece of it, we need to really highlight that yeah, it's the motorist is the one that's behind, you know, the wheel of a motor vehicle, but we also have to take caution for people that are walking or riding bicycles.
Fabulous. Thank you, sir.
I will push back a little bit on that. I was hoping you would say it's very often our infrastructure which doesn't allow for safe interactions at some of these intersections or road stretches.
Yeah,
Because very often that is part of the issue. So we
right.
you know, you can't sometimes you don't see the pedestrian because you haven't gotten your cataract surgery recently, and sometimes you don't see the pedestrian because the roadway is in bad shape, or sometimes you just were going so fast you couldn't see the pedestrian.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And the reason why I didn't is simply because from the investigative standpoint, right, there's always, and that's why we refer to them as crashes now, as we used to refer to them as accidents, because
Yep.
the word crash infers that somebody is at fault as a result of the crash that occurred. And we don't look at that. While like the roadway and the infrastructure is a contributing factor, it's not. It's it's not the cause of the crash. So that's why I don't mention that. But certainly, you know, the roadway, the infrastructure, the lighting, there's all types of the weather. There's all kinds of contributing factors that go towards crashes. But at the end of the day, it's really it's human fault where that we look at. And you know, unfortunately, a lot of the crashes are still relative to impaired driving, distracted driving, aggressive driving. And so it's always good to note that as well. Total arrests
Yeah.
for the year. I'm sorry,
Hang
any
on.
more questions?
Counselor Oliver, are you all set?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief.
All right. Counselor Maliki. You're talking, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Okay, got it. Following up on the bicycle question, is there any difference between regular bikes and the power assist bikes? When I was knocking on doors this summer, I was hearing from people concerned about how fast the bicyclists, the power bicycles were going, and sometimes with, you know, operators not wearing helmets even. And is there any observations you can make about that? That was one question. And also I was wondering if there was a explanation for the rise in commercial burglaries, or is that some kind of random fluctuation without a specific cause?
Yeah, that specifically is more of a random causation, but it is something where we've seen more of those the burglaries of businesses in our area. So like, you know, Newton, Brookline, Watertown, like we've seen more of those take place. I don't know what to attribute it to, but that's you know, sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. I don't really have a way to attribute it to. Right
are they typically solvable?
They are when there's physical evidence left behind, or there's video and that type of thing. A lot of these, we have these different groups that go around and will target different areas, but we haven't seen a whole lot of that. We had one B&E this commercial not too long ago where it was the same individual for two different places in the same night. So sometimes even when you're having a series of them that take place, it could be the same person that's responsible. And there was another, what was the first part?
The power assist bicycles.
Okay, yeah, so those are concerning. We're seeing those all over the state of Massachusetts. We're seeing them all over the city of Newton for sure. And you see these little scooters and many times there are even younger kids that are riding them. They're under 50 cc's, and in Massachusetts, when a vehicle such as that is under 50 cc's, there's no need for a permit or a driver's license. So you have a lot of people that are operating these. I'll call them a vehicle, but they technically don't meet the definition of a vehicle. But they're kids that are riding, and they're more defined as a bicycle, a motorized bicycle. And many times you may have seen some of them, dotting in front of traffic or not following the traffic signals and things like that. So they are very concerning. They are included in some of our bicycle crashes. They seem to be a trend that's going to continue to rise. They seem very popular, especially among the younger crew.
Is there the option to license them locally, even if the state doesn't require it? And does 50 cc refer to an engine size?
Yeah, it would be the engine. So like a moped or something like
So
that.
they're burning fuel. But very small.
None of these are all electric, so they don't have any type of fuel propulsion, but they're under the the 50 cc limit, and they can go pretty fast. I mean, for a little vehicle like that, but they're a problem for sure. Because they're not really regulated, and there's not a whole lot we can do about them if they're not driving appropriately, other than stop and have a chat with them, because there's not a whole lot of regulation on them.
So you're saying we're not allowed to regulate them locally?
I would say, city council has the ability to regulate whatever you want, I would say, but
okay, that might be something to look at next term. Thank you.
We have to check with law.
Mhm.
If you're all set, Councillor Lucas, and then let's go back to looking at stats.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chief Carmichael, for your presentation and service to Newton. I just want to say thank you for providing additional patrols on Walnut Street in Newtonville for some additional enforcement. But I had a question regarding the police webpage on the city's website. Not sure if you are aware, but the police department posts crash reports underneath reports. And the last particular crash report that is listed is from July 5th, 2023. Just wondering why was there a cutoff there, and are you going to, or could you potentially fill in the remaining 5 or 6 months?
yes, we're going to reinstate all of that stuff. I know Councilor Downs was involved a while back when we were talking to LexisNexis, and they had some good programs and stuff to use, but there were some shortfalls with it. We, as you know, we have been experiencing some issues with our website and our design and all that. We fortunately have a new IT director, Matt Taccio, who is absolutely incredible, and he is going to be working in that bureau, the IT bureau, will be working on all different aspects of that. But right now, we've mostly been concentrating on our infrastructure, our servers, and all the things that we've been really far behind as far as our computer systems. So it's coming, but we need a little bit more time to deal with our more infrastructure type of equipment before we get to that. And they're getting a lot done. I mean, we're doing stuff in our cruises for computers, and different networks are being done, phones, all of that stuff. So they're very busy in IT just to catch us up to where we were behind. And we're well aware that we have the issues with the website and with the data and stuff like that, and getting it out there.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Chief.
We're, let's say OUI incidents, we're down 17 in 2023, and on domestic violence, this is, I'm happy to say, well, at least, you know, we're down 21% to 193.
Yeah, again, would love to know whether we can attribute that to our prevention efforts and collaboration with our social worker and with the city, or whether that's just a little more random than that.
I would absolutely, you know, I would certainly attribute some of the decreases in repeat offenses with our POP unit, the problem-oriented policing unit, which is Sergeant Melanie Rooney and Sarah Eckney and our clinician. I'll give you some of their stats. They have been really doing tremendous work in dealing with our mental health calls, homeless, you know, and dealing with people that are unhoused, things like that. And they've just been doing an incredible job with follow-ups, and they're certainly making an impact.
Wonderful.
The demographics of our domestic violence incidents, oddly enough, is the highest number this year was, it was husband and wife, and mother-daughter had somewhat of a high number, and then boyfriend, girlfriend. Of all of the domestic violence, there was 42 arrests made, 12 were summons, and a couple of warrants. The majority of those did not result in an arrest.
Chief, is this data through the end of November? Do you know
Yes,
what the time frame?
this is to November 30th.
Okay, compared to November 30th of last year, or compared to calendar year 22? You're talking
about that's only up to November 30th of this year.
Compared to the end of last year. You can see they're filled in.
So 244, you see that little blank spot between December,
so it's November 30th. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And still, we'll still stay under that number by the end of the year. Some of the things that they've also been doing through the POP unit is just and through the court system of the high risk domestic violence incidents. So years ago, when the law was actually created to address strangulation, suffocation, because across the Commonwealth we were seeing an increase in domestic violence that were involving that type of violence, and so we actually changed and made aggravated laws for that to cover that. So we do still see some of those types of incidents during the household, like domestic violence type of incident. What do we have next?
Citations by race, arrests by race, and that's then all of them. And then you pulled out City of Newton residents by race in citations and arrests. And I appreciate that. I know that comes up as a regular question on this committee, and I'm sure my colleagues appreciate that. There you go.
Chief, what slide would you like me to show?
You just cut out.
I think the citation data was first. Yep. Yeah. So this data has been requested by PS&T in the past, so we continue to put that in there. It's basically a breakdown of citations, warnings, and then the arrests. and arrests is the data that follows this. All of this data is also reported to the state, which we don't have the report yet for this year, but based on the hands-free law, every police department in the Commonwealth is required to report all data on and demographics for arrests, citations, and warnings. And then that data is all submitted to the state, and then they create, through EOPS, the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, they create a report every year that will be released. So we anticipate seeing that one coming up soon. There's also been some changes in how we report on arrests during the booking process, and we've actually had to change on some of the police reform stuff. When we book people, we had to add different types of gender so that we covered different genders and how people report at the time of booking. And what happens is we will collect that data, and then we also submit that data to the state. That hasn't happened yet. We're setting the system up, but that's going to be a new thing that we have to do, along with submitting booking photos to the state as well. Anyways, so these are citations by race, and as you can see the breakdown between warnings and citations. It's pretty consistent with what we typically see. And we cover January to that also goes to November 30th.
All right. Any questions from the committee? All right, let's move on.
And
You have domestic related incidents.
Chair, my hands up.
Oh, all right, Councilor Lucas.
Yeah, Chief, this wasn't in the report, but I believe you have reported on this before. It was incidents of hate, whether it be anti-Black, anti-Asian, anti-LGBTQ, anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
That's not in this report. So I was just wondering, you provide those stats if you have them. If not, email them to the clerk and we can get them into the report.
Let's see. Yep. Okay. I'm going to have to get that for you as well. So this year, as far as do you want me to get into that right now, or should we wait till we get through this first?
Let's get through this first and then get to that, shall we?
So then you have arrests. This is also by demographic for race. Those are the arrests over the year. This is pretty consistent with what we had last year as well. Many times, a lot of these, like, as you know, some of them are domestic violence related. We have to make an arrest. And others, we really do a good job here in Newton as far as seeking alternatives to arrest, and using, resources that we have, like restorative justice and diverting cases, as well as our POP unit and their follow-ups and what they do. So that's always, it's good to keep that in mind. Okay.
Great, thank you. And then we have the domestics, and they look like they've been going down since 2020.
They have, and we think of ways to what to attribute this to, and I'm going to go out on a limb and just kind of say that if you see the rise in 2020, we saw a lot of different issues during 2020 because of the pandemic, with an increase in domestic violence, people being home, people being secluded, and also with mental health type of calls. So those, you can see the decline from 2020, 2021, 22, 22, and then 23. That trend continues to go down, which is good to see.
Yeah, I heard someone who knows better on this than I do on a podcast saying, it was that the pandemic was particularly deadly for women, particularly those in a domestic violence situation, because they were basically locked in with their abuser.
Sir, for sure. Then mental health calls. So you see 2020. That was what we thought was pretty high number then, because if you compare it to the 5 years before, but those have actually increased up to 2022 and dropped a little bit in 23. So some of this is also attributed to our POP unit identifying other underlying issues, doing more outreach, and including Health and Human Services helping us with a lot of outreach that they do, the outreach that we're doing. And when we're talking about mental health calls, these are basically your, suicidal ideation, just people that are dysregulated, things like calls like that. And part of what our POP unit has been doing is getting to the underlying issues of some of these calls, including like domestic violence, whereas it's domestic violence, it's occurring, but it could be attributed to some of the mental health issues that are kind of going along with that. So, any questions on the mental health calls?
I have one from Counselor Maliki. Go ahead.
Just curious on the race breakdown. Is that how people self-identify themselves and they can only pick one category so they don't get double counted? It's not your office trying to figure out?
That's a very good question. And so the answer to that is that no, they don't self-identify. And what law enforcement, what police chiefs across the state have been trying to do is make it a requirement on the driver's license. If you're going to ask the officer on the street to make that determination, they're not going to ask. So they're going to put what they perceive it as. And I believe that because of the pushback, that's the way they want it. They want it to be based on what the officer perceives and not based on how the person identifies or how, the simple way would be to put it on their driver's license so that it's accurate and the officer could write it down. But that's not what happened. And so it's left up to the officer to, based on their perception, to write down what they perceive it as. And I did recently see an article where the police were being scrutinized for that. And I think wrongly, because the police were writing down certain demographics as white, where they could have been Hispanic or whatever it is. So the police were being scrutinized for it, but yet there's no system in place other than the system we have now where it's based on the officer's perception. So to scrutinize them for that when they're doing it, when that's the way they're being forced to do it, it doesn't make sense. But there has been a push to try and add that information onto the driver's license and make it easier on everybody. But
I can see if the purpose is to judge whether people are being treated unfairly because of their perceived race, you'd want it to be based on perception and not whether somebody who looks white when you go to arrest them actually has an Arabic name or something. But
yeah, when the hands-free law passed, the obviously from law enforcement, like, well, how do we determine this, and how do we put this down? And basically the answer was that whatever you perceive it to be.
Okay.
There was some groups that said, well, you should ask them, and like, you're not gonna ask that question roadside on motor vehicle stop. The officer wouldn't feel comfortable, and frankly, some people might take offense to it. And so, the way that it stands now, the way that it stands now is based on the officer's perception.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. That I think wraps us up. Any other questions for the chief from other counselors, not just the committee, or shall we move on to our licenses and our otherwise long agenda?
Did you want to touch on the school stuff or?
We were going to talk about school safety. That was later in the agenda.
Oh, okay.
And I think so. Note to self if you're making one, and we could take that up if you're the right person. This is number 23623, discussion regarding safety measures in Newton Public Schools. I'll do that first. I will take a motion from the committee. Yes.
Chair, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but does the chief have the incidents of hate data available?
Yeah, I will send the whole breakdown, but so this year we had 46 total incidents. We are seeing an increase, and a lot of it, as you know, has been more along the lines of anti-Semitism, bias incidents such as that. And then I will send you not just the statistics, but then the breakdown of the different groups that are primarily being targeted. We have been meeting with a lot of different groups over the last since October, in trying to get information out there, because there is a lot of apprehension and fear that's taken place, obviously within our own city, with some of what's been happening over in the Middle East. And what we're trying to do is, from our perspective, what's really important here in the United States is that our biggest concerns are going to be violent extremist individuals. So people that, would decide to act upon their own beliefs or ideologies upon another person or group, mostly acting as individuals. So we're not, and I have been to multiple briefings already with the terrorism task force, and that's the heightened concern, but there's no actual concerns here that we're aware of, any credible types of threats. But the other things that we're more concerned with locally are things such as banner drops, sticker campaigns, more, property destruction. Like we've seen a lot of people like stealing signs in Newton or taking signs down, things like that. And as a community policing type of response to that, our goal is to try and meet with these different groups, bring these groups together, make sure people aren't being splintered, and we're kind of having a conversation of overall safety, and trying to make sure that the community doesn't become fragmented. And that's kind of been our goal recently, and where some of the bias incidents occur in the schools, the same thing with our partnership with the schools and our youth officers, and making sure that we keep that kind of sense of cohesion, as opposed to letting everybody kind of go off in different directions. And I'm happy to see that some of the other things that have been happening lately have been more interfaith, and I think that's the best way to go, when you have all the different houses of worship and the different faiths coming together to denounce violence and make sure that we keep things safe.
Thank you, Chief. We'll get more into that later, but I'd appreciate a breakdown at a future date, maybe the next week. And we had one other thing. People remind me, there was one other thing we asked for the chief did not have. Oh, locations of crashes, pedestrian crashes and bike crashes. So we have a sense of, are we looking at a badly designed intersection, or are we looking at something something more
Sergeant Wade's on it.
something we can
Sergeant Wade's on
something
it.
we
You
can
may
prevent or not
have that data for us.
Okay. And I don't think we need to go into that tonight. I know your time is limited. From the committee, what I need is a motion to NAN this item. Otherwise, we can hold it, but it will be NAN at the end of the term.
Yeah, motion to NAN.
Motion to NAN from Councillor Oliver. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay. I am going to then jump to 23623, discussion regarding safety measures in the Newton Public Schools while you're here, Chief. This was Lipoff, Loretto, Danberg, Kalis, Maliki, Ryan Grossman, Wright, Lucas, Oliver, Krinsman, who's missing a Z, clerk, and Albright, requesting a discussion with the chief of police and pertinent staff to discuss the current training and protocols in place for safety preparedness in the Newton schools, ensuring a safe and secure environment for Newton students. And if we can do this
Sure.
expeditiously.
Thank you. This is, and I appreciate you bringing this topic up, especially in light of all the, including today, more violence that we've seen in the country, in your most recent incidents where, you know, either school violence or, you know, violence that's carried out with firearms and that sort of thing. So we, right now in Newton, we have a standing protocol that's been in place for 4 or 5 years now. And it's a good protocol. I have been in contact with our new superintendent, Nolan, as well as who's always been a great help, Toby Romer from our schools. We do have a good state of readiness and preparedness. We do have good partnerships in place. We do have protocol in place that will deal with red flags, such as, you know, the biggest thing being information sharing through our MOU. So as you may or may not know, the Newton Public Schools and the Newton Police Department have an MOU that is signed by the superintendent and myself, and that essentially gives us the ability to share information between the police and the schools, not only including things that happen in school, but that happen out of school, maybe over the weekend, or, you know, if there was anything of concern that happened outside of school. By law, we can share that information with our schools, and they can, by law, share information with us. Based on the new police reform law, we can share certain information, and the school can as well. But we're also give a lot of the oversight to the school. So, in other words, after police reform, the police aren't getting involved in disciplinary issues in the school. Like, if where there's a resource, if one of our youth officers wants to work as a resource and help the school out with something, that's great. But we're not a disciplinary function in our schools, so it's important to note that. So the information sharing occurs through the MOUs, and the protocol that we have in place. And I have to be honest, because there's and I know this isn't going to be a popular thing to say, but one of the things that I had concerns with when I first came to Newton was the open campus type of atmosphere. And I know that since Superintendent Nolan's been here, that she's kind of secured that a little bit more, especially at the two high schools. And in my most recent conversation with her, we're going to continue to try and sit down and strategize on, you know, if we have any weaknesses in our training and our protocol and what we're doing and where we're going to go from there. I will say that I am a strong supporter of the ALICE program. And ALICE is an acronym for Alert, Lockdown, Counter, Inform, and Evacuate. And the reason why I'm a big fan of it is because it is a system, it's a critical incident response system that can apply to anything from a small disturbance or a fight in the hallway all the way up to an active shooter. The same protocol can apply. You do the evacuations the same, you reverse evacuate the same way, you lock down the same way. If you had to lock out, which is if an incident is occurring outside of the school and you had to lock out, keeping everybody out or sheltering in place, There's different protocol. Now, the protocol we use is very similar to Alice. And it includes things like, as you might have heard, the terms run, hide, fight, which would be something that we would use in critical incidents to a violent incident. And so the other issue is training, right? So when the superintendent and I were speaking, I said, what is the best measurement for training? How do we know that we are really ready and we're prepared for certain things? And the way to do that is simply ask staffs, teachers, or people in the lunchroom or wherever it might be, what is our protocol? What do we do if this happens? And if there's any hesitation, then we need to work on it. We need to be better at it. And we need to make sure that people are aware of and understand the protocol. And when I say that, one of the things that when I first came here, they handed me this binder of critical incident response. And they said, this is our critical incident response. And I said, well, this is great. This is good to have, but a lot of times where these things are on the shelf. And when something occurs, a critical incident happens, we can't turn to page 16 and see what we're supposed to do. So we need preparedness is very important, that we're ready for this and this is how we're going to do it. And that comes in and repetitiveness. That's how that's how we train, right? We train on certain things and we do it over and over again until we get very good at it. And so the protocol we have in place right now is very good. There was a lot of work that was put into it. And I look forward to working further with Superintendent Nolan and Toby Romer in our school, in our department, to enhance it as much as we can. We have gone to the Alice protocol in the city. So we train, we have Alice trained officers that train different organizations within the city, not all government agencies, but we've also done City Hall and houses of worship and other different locations. So as far as the police response, we are very well equipped and very well trained to deal with any type of critical incident that happens in our school, whether it be a more minor incident all the way up to active shooter type of response. We do have a unified response with, police, fire. We have an ASHA program that we will be working on more with the fire chief and us. We have a program called ASHA, which is Active Shooter Hostile Event Response, and we have a very good understanding of how that works, how we would respond to these different things. We would work with our fire department in the event of a major critical incident like that to have rescue task force teams, which are essentially a firefighter with a couple of police officers that would, make entry to a location and treat wounded people and things like that, but also have triage areas and that sort of thing. That has been a major shift across the country on how we respond to these things. Whereas, years ago, our response to these types of things were going all the way back to Columbine, where the police go to an active shooter type of situation, was they respond, they set up, they create a perimeter, and they wait for SWAT. And that's not how we do it, how it's done anymore. Now, when it's a hot zone, officers are trained to respond and to make entry and stop the threat as immediately as possible. And if that zone turns, and once that zone turns from hot to warm, we have protocol in place through ASHA where police and fire will be making entries to treat wounded people. And the old protocol for that was that fire would stage in a certain location and they would stay there until that zone is cold. And then we would move in. So a lot of that has shifted now because of unfortunately, because of the situations we've seen across the country.
Any questions from the committee? We have a lot of people waiting on licenses, so I want to keep it brief, but if you have questions.
And if anyone hears that snoring, that's the dog. That's not me.
We can see you're not snoring, Steve, but I'm glad the dog is there.
He's next.
Just for clarity, when I read the docket item, I did not see a request for schools to staff to be present, and knowing how stretched they are, I didn't invite them. But if the committee feels strongly about that in the new term, if I'm chair of PSNT, I'm happy to have this conversation with them and perhaps also fire in the room. All right. I think we can thank you, Chief Carmichael, and let you get on with your evening.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much for showing up and for all you do.
Thank you.
Do we need a
I'm gonna
vote?
Counselor Down, can you take a motion?
Yes,
You need a
I need
name
a-
for this?
yes, I need a motion to name this.
So moved.
And from Vice Chair Markowitz, we have a motion to vote no action necessary on 23623. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. So I will go back to our regular scheduled program, which is, let's start with 40523, VPNE Parking Solutions LLC, requesting biennial renewal of one bus license for LaSalle University. No changes proposed from the 2021 license. Who's here to present?
Sergeant Wade and Mr. Balin are here.
Okay. Sergeant Wade, any issues at all that we need to know about?
Sorry, no, there've been no issues or complaints that we have heard about in the police department.
All right. Any additional items to add to that, Mr. Bellin?
No, ma'am. No additional.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? I will take a motion to approve.
So moved.
All right. Motion to approve. 40523. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, I think that's unanimous. I'm going to take the new auto license next and then all of the renewals. So the next one is 40623, Ralph Thomas, 50 Bauer Street, Newtonville, Mass, requesting one new public auto license for Sato Trading LLC.
His vehicle was inspected by the police department very recently and did pass all the requirements.
And is the proprietor here to talk about what he's doing or tell us any more?
I do not see him.
Do we need that?
We do have two iPhones. I don't know who's behind.
Is Mr. Thomas here?
Please speak up if you are. So, Ms. Delaney, what do we do?
You can still approve it without him being present since he passed
All right.
inspection and he returned all the paperwork and the fee. It's
All right.
your call.
I will take a motion.
So moved.
Any discussion? Moved by Councilor Lucas. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? I will abstain. Then we have some public auto licenses, 407, 408, 409, 410, 411, and 412, renewal of public auto licenses. I'm going to read them all off and then we'll vote them all as a group after discussing them all as a group. Ismail Uncock, 184 River Street, West Newton, Mass, requesting renewal of one public auto license for Ismo Limo LLC. Michael Gimmelfarb, 274 Dedham Street, requesting renewal of one public auto license for American Truck and Equipment Sales LLC. Rajiv Kumar, 2323 Washington Street, apartment G3, requesting renewal of one public auto license for Sai Enterprises, Inc. Dhanraj Mahas, 275 Grove Street, 2-400, requesting renewal of one public auto license for MHS Worldwide LLC. Lassine Belhouchet, 32 Adams Street, requesting renewal of one public auto license for Boston Cool Ride Limo Inc. And Donald LaPlante, 21 Parker Street, requesting renewal of one public auto license for Dom's Car Service Aller in Newton. Sergeant Wade, any discussion on this? Anything we need to know?
No, we've had no complaints about any of these. All the vehicles have been inspected within the required time frame within the last year.
Nothing
Yeah,
falling
I'll
off that we need to worry about. Okay, good.
Nothing we know of.
Anybody have any discussion on this? Not seeing any, I will take a motion to approve all of them.
Motion to approve them all.
From Counselor Oliver. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? All right. Perfect. Now we can move to, you guys can all go home unless you want to go and listen to us discuss parking. And of course, you're welcome to do that. 37123, requesting a discussion with the administration about overnight on-street parking during the winter parking ban for people with disability placards. Councilors Downs, Lucas, Humphrey, Kelly, Greenberg, Oliver, Albright, Wright, Krinsman, Maliki, Grossman, and Ryan requesting a discussion with the administration about overnight on-street parking during the winter parking ban for people with disability placards. I believe, Ms. Fairley, you are here for that item. Amy?
Yes.
There you are.
Yes. I have, over the years of being an ADA coordinator, when people with placards and valid placards and they have disabilities and are not able to walk the distance to a municipal parking lot usually, or that they need their car in an emergency overnight for a child with a disability faster than the ambulances can make it. I have asked a reasonable accommodation, applied for them to the police department, usually to the captain of the traffic bureau. And with that, I know to ask for the information of their license, the car license or vehicle license number, make and model, color of their car, where approximately it'll be parked. They don't have a specific accessible parking space. They're just parking out front of their home. And so because the winter overnight parking ban was taken up more seriously, I think this year, maybe more than any other years, or maybe other years, I thought that this might be a possibility. People don't know enough to get in touch with me, except if the police do refer people to me. I've had 2 today. So I would love, I'd love to have it to be more, I don't know if the obvious is not the word, but to be more possible for others who get in a bind and their disability doesn't allow them to walk a distance from their home to get their car or park their car somewhere else.
Right. You have an informal program, and one of the goals, I think, is of docketing this is to create a more formal program, at least for the time where we have an overnight parking ban. And it's not knowing whether it gets overturned or not in the referendum. And a number of the committee members in our most recent discussions about overnight parking bans expressed an interest in trying to make the system a little fairer or a little more accommodating of people with various needs. This being one that for me was fairly obvious. And we currently have kind of an informal system. You have to know to call Jeannie, or the police will tell you to call Jeannie, and then you will get an accommodation until that more or less works until the next winter. Is that about right?
Yes. Unfortunately, some of them don't remember to get back to me at the beginning of the next winter, and they get tickets, and then they get in touch with me again. So yeah, that is how it works, though. Yes. Correct.
And if you would just explain for the committee just how prevalent that is. How many do you issue in a year? Usually, roughly, back of the envelope, and how difficult is it? How much work is this for you and the police department?
It's not a lot of work. It's more that people don't know that they could possibly, and they go to great lengths and get tickets and everything. I'd say somewhere between a half a dozen and a dozen, depending on how many hangover from the year before or renew. So occasionally their circumstances change. They have to get in touch with me if their car changes, their license plate. So it isn't a lot. Many people, in Newton have a driveway. Many do. But sometimes the tandem driveway is difficult when you need to be the last one in and the first one out, and that can't always be arranged if that's your concern with your disability. So I think it would be don't want to use the word automatic, but it would be I think a better system to allow those who have a disability with the RMV placard or plate to receive and not have to be called a reasonable accommodation, instead to be an exemption or an exception. I'm not sure what the legal word is, to the winter overnight parking ban.
Right. And we're not here to vote on any legislation. None has been proposed. We are merely discussing this so that we understand the extent of the problem, so that next term we can pull something together, possibly in time for the next winter. Ms. Fairley, one more question, and then I'm going to turn this over to the committee for questions. How many people with placards do you think would take advantage of this if it were automatic now?
That's hard to say. So our older adult population, which we have a pretty high percentage, most likely do have the need, but just don't know where to go about it. So it could increase from that population. I don't think it's going to increase much below that. That would probably where I would see most of the additional. For example, senior services might, let them know that they could possibly do this, and if it's difficult for them to. Sometimes it's their driveway that's difficult. Even if they have a driveway, sometimes it's their driveway, and how they get out of their house and how they get into their car. So, we do have quite a few requested accessible parking spaces right on the street. And those are people with valid placards and plates. I guess we could look at that number. I don't have it at handy. David Kosis and the TPR has it. Most likely, maybe those people would actually consider it because they've gone to the effort of requesting it. But when they do get a residential accessible parking space out front of their home, we tell them at this point that they're not allowed to stay there overnight. So for 4 months, they have to scramble a bit every winter. So it might increase by that number, but I don't know what it is.
Okay. All right, questions from the committee. I have Councilor Oliver, followed by Councilor Markowitz. Sergeant Wade, do you want to go first? Let me put you first.
I'll just speak briefly on it. Jeannie and I very rarely disagree, but logistically, giving blanket permission for people with accessible placards to park on the street is very logistically hard for the officers who are working the overnights. As we know, snow, getting on windshields, frost, leaves in the fall time, the officers are not able to see handicap placards that are hanging from, whether it be the rear view mirror or on the dash that some people put them. And it's not expected, nor do we want the officers clearing off portions of windshields, risks, scratching a windshield or anything else. And most of the time, they do not have to get out of their vehicles to issue these tickets. As anybody who's got them know, they're generally in their door jamb because it's a lot easier that way and it's safer that way, especially in the wintertime. We need to know what the vehicle is, because when Jeannie emails either me or the captain and asks for consideration for a vehicle, that particular plate and vehicle go into our system for consideration. Every night the officers come in, they check their complaint streets and their consideration streets, and they jot them down, and they know that, vehicle ABC 123 is allowed to be on the street for that winter due to their accessible placard. So to give blanket, that means they would have to check every single vehicle that is on the street. And as we all know, there's a lot of them in the wintertime, to see if they're exempt due to their placard. So logistically, it would make it extremely difficult and very time consuming. So the system that we have now, the captain and I have conferred on this, and we think it works. And we would like to keep it this way.
Great. Thank you. All right. I'm going to start from the top again. Thank you for your input. Councillor Oliver and Councillor Markowitz.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just trying to, I guess I want to understand what we just heard there from, I'm sorry, is it Sergeant Wade?
Sergeant Wade, Jeannie Farrell.
Sergeant Wade. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I had Sergeant correct. So the program itself that we're hearing, is it the process by which the placards are, go through the process, come out of NPD, right, and then are placed in the vehicle? Or is it the volume of placards that are out there, or both that are challenging?
Well, I think the placards that the police department hand out are not the placards that we're referring to. The accessible placards are the ones that are issued by the registry of motor vehicles that you see when people are parking in accessible spaces.
Okay.
Those are what they currently use.
The ones hanging from the rear view.
Correct. We do not currently issue placards for those exemptions.
All right. And those are the ones that are difficult to be seen. I can tell, frost on the windshield, snow, et cetera. Those would be hard to find. Correct.
In fact, this year, the municipal lot stickers that we used to give out in the past, we've actually changed them to a bright, God, I have to remember the color. I think they're orange placards this year that people put right on their dash that make it easier for the officers to see them at night, to know that those vehicles are allowed to be in the municipal lot tonight during the ban. It used to be stickers that went on the windshield, and it was hard for them to see. So we switched to the same type of visitor placards that residents get.
Got it. All right. So then do we have a sense for, and by the way, I might be one of the folks that Councillor Chair Downs was talking about a few minutes ago. I wholeheartedly support getting this right for anyone with a disability who has this need. I'm also very sensitive to how we facilitate managing or policing the program, and then the processes and so on and so forth that are part of it. But I am curious, do we have a sense of how many state issued, RMV issued placards we have or plates we have in the city?
I guess you could possibly get that from the RMV. I tried to get to the RMV on my own for something else, and they never answer. So maybe the police could get that, because I think maybe you have a better in on that to the RMV to ask how many have been issued or how many valid ones are in existence for the city. Those plates are less. They don't encourage the plates as much anymore, but you still can request them. The placards are more prevalent in the sense of the preferred way of telling that someone driving that vehicle or someone riding in that vehicle has a disability and needs to park either near their house or near a store or whatever. So yeah.
Okay. No, I think
probably a good number to know.
Yeah, I would think that would be. I mean, this is in my head as I start to think through how we design something that will not only accommodate the needs, but also not becomes an onerous program for NPD to manage and work with. Some of these figures are going to be incredibly helpful. And I'm also curious, do we have a sense of how many, and I will not get this right out of the gate, so I apologize in advance. How many dedicated handicap spots do we have on public streets today? Because I know that they're required in the lots, but we also allow certain, we allow residents to have, for example, a spot in front of their house or close to it. I think there were a couple of incidents over here on Los Angeles Street or in and around the development of Riverdale. And I'm curious if there's a sense of what the volume of those are as well.
That's what Janie was talking about getting from Mr. Kosis.
Right, and it, yeah.
Because
and-
she hasn't, but neither she or I have looked into that. That is something, however, that
My bad.
I'm happy to shoot him an email and get you that number.
All right.
But-
No,
but
I apologize for messing that up. I missed
That's
that.
not a problem.
That's
Okay.
okay,
That
but
number
I-
could be in the TPR, the traffic and parking regulation.
it should.
Probably
I
is,
believe
yeah.
that they are listed in there.
But it may include all of the commercial ones, meaning the on-street parking spaces in village centers
Correct.
as well as residential, and nobody would be parking on the street in front of,
CVS
Works.
at night. Yeah.
overnight at 2:00 in the morning. So we might have to really parse it out of the TPR. I'm involved in absolutely every single one of those, by the way, that we grant, and it is not that many.
Okay.
It's probably 4 a year,
Oh,
maybe
okay.
5, and it's a 2 to 3 month process because they have to have the placard. They have to send it to me and the COD. The COD has to hear them give reasons why they need this parking space out front. This has nothing to do with winter, by the way. It's usually
Sure.
completely nothing to do with winter. And then once support or not support from the Commission on Disability is determined by a vote at that meeting, then it goes on the next available agenda of the Traffic Council. So, and I know Councilor Downs has seen all of those come through as well in her position on the Traffic Council. So they always wind up at the Traffic Council. And so, I'd say it was at least, 3, 4, 5 a year. I don't think I've seen it go up to 6 because we number them AP 5-23 like that. So
Great.
maybe 6 in a year. And
Awesome.
we remove them too.
We remove them
We remove
after
them.
they're no longer used,
Right.
so the
Yeah.
number doesn't grow exponentially.
Right. It's not
Counselor
5 per
Oliver.
year. Yeah, it's not like more. It's not like we're adding half a dozen every year, and then it just keeps to accumulating. Yeah. No. Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'll yield the floor to the rest of my colleagues, but thank you.
Thank you. Mhm.
Thank you. I have Counselor Markowitz.
Thank you, Chair. So a couple different things. I want to make just, this wasn't part of what I wanted to say, but just on the heels of what Counselor Oliver was saying and Ms. Fairley was explaining, the number of spots we have designated today as, needing to be accessible, really, Ms. Fairley made a comment about separating commercial and the residential, but the need here can often just be temporary. Those things are more permanent. So, the demand is just different than what the spaces are out there. I think particularly because you may have people who get placards and only have them for a period of time because it's a temporary. I had surgery some years ago and I had a temporary one for like a couple of weeks. So you gotta be really careful here with the data. Now, this sounds to me like a reasonable need. I think this is, if you take just kind of a financial or an effort lens on this, though, you got to think a little bit about the cost benefit here. Like how, what's the volume of activity and how do we find a solution that, can fix this, but is still respectful of the fact that this isn't $1 million, process design thing. It's something that's, less expensive. But I think the issues that came out tonight, the questions are all part of the requirements for resolving this. Clearly, policing is difficult. I'm 100% with Sergeant Wade. I've said this before. We don't have that many patrol officers out in the city at any point in time anyway. And, their primary job in many cases is as first responders. And we don't want them doing too much of this stuff, here and there. Yeah, sure. But, it's really not what we want them doing. They're too valuable. They're just a resource we can't afford to use in that way. So I think we have to look at how to do this, accommodate this somehow. There may be a way to automate some of this. I think the difficulty there is going to be in deciding, the part that the computer would have a harder time doing, AI all aside, is Ms. Fairley's judgment when she hears this and says, okay, I know this, I've seen this before, blah, 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 all the analysis that she's going to go through to grant this thing. Because if you just grant it blanket, then I think you'll open the door to saying, well, anybody with a placard can now get a lift on the winter parking ban, such that it is. And I don't think maybe we want to do that, somehow inadvertently, but I don't think we really want to do that. So I think we want to be, careful there. But, I'll just sum it up and say, you'll be working on this with the other parking stuff next term, I'm sure, and I won't be there. But sounds to me like a reasonable need. But I do think you really got to do some cost benefit in terms of, what it takes. And it might be interesting just to, at some point, get Ms. Fairley to kind of explain how she evaluates this when she gets it. What's her thought process? There may be a way to make that somewhat, I don't want to say, you can code it somehow in a workflow so that you actually could ask those questions. And then they may have to submit evidence and all that, all of which can be accommodated, but that might be a way of doing it. But it's interesting need. And, I think the volume will dictate how much effort you can put into, resolving it. Thanks. I'm all set.
Thanks, Vice Chair Markowitz. I think in our initial discussions, Ms. Fairley had a pretty good idea of what it would take. I think her main need was to have it better publicized, which would be possible if it were a more formal program rather than an informal.
I agree. I heard
program.
that. I heard that very much in her comments.
Right.
It's like, how do you get it's the age-old problem. I'm looking at the COO now. It's the age-old problem of how do you tell people all the stuff that the city actually has available to you?
Those of us who have newsletters could
newsletters
put it out.
and
Yeah.
those of us who send them out every 8 months or so.
Those of us, and also those of us who get the calls as counselors or ward counselors, even if that's not your bailiwick, about I cannot walk down my driveway in the winter anymore at 89.5.
Right.
Can I get a pass on the parking ban?
We're touching we're touching a lot of people, but it's still one at a time. We do need to find better ways to communicate this stuff.
I'm not sure we're communicating one at a time. I think though that we're starting to at least I'm starting to get the sense that this will not open floodgates of lots of people wanting special treatment, but instead would be a way to formalize something that is already being done and make it a little fairer. At least that was my impression on the initial research.
I agree with you on formalization. I think that makes sense. Absolutely.
Right. Mr. Yo.
Hi, good evening. First, I just want to quickly say, I think a lot like I really greatly appreciate the way Chris thinks and Councilor Markowitz, and we'll miss you. And you were a big help to us in the administration thinking about these things. And so I just had to say that. We did think about, would this make sense to try formalizing with software, but it's simple enough, and we need Jeannie's judgment as well. So, I think the system largely works well. I think we have some challenges. If, Jeannie goes on vacation for a week or something like that, she's shaking her head. We need some backup. We need to formalize it, and we need to publicize it. Those are all things I think we can get done. So, I think this is something that we'll keep improving, and it's small in numbers. But I think we'll keep working on this together between police and Jeannie's team, and council input coming up. And then yes.
Jeannie doesn't have a team.
Don't have a team.
So, anyways, I just need to say that. So I think this one we can talk about the other two docket items, but this one I think we'll get this in pretty good shape going forward.
So I just want to mention that Brookline does not allow parking overnight, supposedly all year round, and those police officers do look for the placard, and maybe it is better the other 8 months, and maybe it's more difficult in the winter months of frost. Obviously, snow emergency, just for that one night, times how many storms do we get? 7 at the most, and I think 0 last year. Would find a place somehow, beg, borrow, and steal a parking space in their neighbor's yard. But they seem to do it. So I've asked a few times how they do it, and I think it is an automatic thing. If a placard is up there, they don't give a ticket. But and I don't think it's going to be that many people. We have 70% plus single-family homes. Most of those single-family homes do have a driveway. And single-family, I'm not even talking two-family like what I live in. So I just want to mention that so that it's not the floodgates like you also said, Councilor Downs. I'd like it to be more open and people would know more about the possibility if they get in the jam or they really can't, do their driveway anymore, and they just need to go out the front door. And if ever there was an emergency and they wouldn't be able to park their car in the driveway, I can tell you all sorts of stories. And it isn't my judgment. They still almost always have a placard. Once in a while, they don't. They haven't applied for it yet. Once in a while, but other than that, their reason would be any reason you would think of. I don't have a driveway space. I don't have this. I can't walk into my driveway anymore, even though I do have a driveway. I don't send Sergeant Wade out to see if they've got a driveway or anything like that. I just, I talk to them, but they would have a reason that would be, all of you would think, oh yeah, this person needs help. It's nothing special as to, I don't quiz them about their disability unless they don't have a placard. Then they explain to me why they haven't applied for one yet, but they should, that sort of thing. I think that's happened once in 8.5 years.
Yeah. We're not going to solve this tonight. We're just talking about it, getting the questions lined up. And I think hearing what you're talking about, and by the way, Brookline, geographically, much smaller place. And I remember working with, covering the police and the municipality there. They had no trouble figuring out, there's always this car with this placard in front of this house, and whether it's winter or summer, they know that car belongs there. It's not a big deal. They learn. They hire smart police officers with memories, and that's all they need. Newton's a little bigger, and we have some streets that are a little more complicated and less traveled. But and far fewer multifamily. So I think at this point, are we done discussing this? We can take a motion to NAN. And I have some homework. I'm going to shoot an email off to David Kozis and also to remind Sergeant Wade we were going to try to find out how many Newton residents have placards. Yeah. Okay. So moved. So we have a motion to NAN. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any in opposition? Any abstentions? Okay. I'm going to move on to the next item. 28223, discussion and ordinance change to section 1949 temporary parking permits. Councilors Norton, Lucas, and Albright requesting discussion and ordinance change to section 1949 temporary parking permits to give police more discretion in distributing temporary permits and reducing hardship, especially on tradespersons and contractors. Who's here to tell us about this? Councilor Lucas, are you doing this? Councilor Norton, shoot, welcome.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. Great to be here. I'm very rarely at this committee, so nice to hear your discussion tonight. So this came about because a Ward 2 resident who lives on Madison Ave reached out. She has had a home improvement project going on. Madison has no parking from 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. and her contractors kept getting tickets And so when Ms. Nigam reached out to the police department to request a parking permit for the contractor, she was told that the permits could not be given to override the 2-hour no parking from 7:30 to 9:30 due to the specifics of the city ordinance. I'm reading from the email. And so the option suggested instead was to send the contractors to Washington Park and have them walk back and forth. They've got a lot of tools and heavy stuff. So I checked in with the law department. The law department communicated that they had thought that the police did have the discretion to waive the parking requirements in that scenario. But to make it crystal clear, that's why we decided to docket this item. So what we are proposing with this ordinance is basically to give our police more discretion to grant parking waivers in areas with certain parking restrictions. That is in areas that do allow parking, just not all the time. So like no parking 7:30 to 9:30, no parking 4 to 6, no parking Memorial Day to Labor Day, et cetera, but not in areas where parking is never allowed, like handicap spaces or things like that. So that really sums it up.
Okay, and we have the language attached to our docket down near the bottom if anyone hasn't scrolled down that far. Is there anyone else here to talk about this, to present this to us from law or from the administration?
Stand up.
I'm
Sergeant
here, Chair,
White.
but I have bad.
Okay, Sergeant White.
I am aware of where this stems from, Madison Ave. I spoke to that person on several occasions. One of the things, we have this problem all the time. Contractors come in, they come up to my bureau, and they want permits to park because they have to work outside a house. After speaking with Captain Doucette about it, we don't have an issue with overriding the no parking during certain times. What we find is when we look at like the no parking 7 to 9, there's several reasons why those are in existence. For commuters, they don't want commuters parking on the street, jumping on the T. A lot of it around Newton North is to prevent, Newton North people from parking there around colleges and stuff like that. I am in favor of allowing tradespeople to park in front of the house they're working on. I've had work done on my house. I don't have a problem with it. But what we were told is we can't, the no parking is what we can't override. If there's 2-hour limits, we can override that. We don't have a problem judging things on a case-by-case basis. A contractor comes up, we can look at the street on Google Earth and let's say it's wide enough. We don't have a problem doing that. It's when the street is narrow and it's going to cause a traffic problem that we have a problem with, and especially if it's no parking during a certain time for that reason. So we don't have a problem with a change like that as long as we can, override it on a case-by-case basis under certain circumstances.
So you need a change to the ordinance to give you discretion. Is that correct?
Correct, because the way we read it, and we contacted law as well, we don't have the discretion right now for no parking. If 2-hour parking, 3-hour parking, we do, but strict no parking, we don't, is what we were told.
Okay. And a temporary parking permit under the changes I'm looking at may not be issued in an area where parking is prohibited at all times.
Correct.
So we've, as traffic council, decided this area is just too narrow to accommodate on-street parking ever, and so it's not there. Okay.
The other issue,
not create a safety hazard, and we take out the time restrictions only. Yep. So go ahead. Sorry.
The other issue that's come up a lot lately that I have not had time to bring up a law, and I don't know if this is the time or the place, but a lot of contractors are doing long-term work at homes right now. And I believe the ordinance states we can only provide these permits for three months without permission from the chief or something like that to extend it past the 3 to 4 month time frame. So I don't know if that's something this committee can look into in the future, because that comes up a lot as well. Well, my project's going to go 8 months. Well, then we're going to have to look at it after we usually give 4 months, but then after that, we're in kind of a jam. And generally they don't come back, but that does come up a lot.
Really curious what projects require that amount of time, but maybe I
I
don't
had
wanna
one
know.
in today. They're doing plumbing, electrical, and other stuff. And it's one general contractor who the house was torn down, and they're going to go 7 to 8 months, through the spring. And I'm like, well, we're limited to about 4 months, so I don't know if that's
Pick your four.
right.
Okay. Questions, comments from the committee. I have Vice Chair Markowitz, followed by Councilor Grossman, and Sergeant Wade, Jonah, Mr. Temple, please feel free to just jump in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just had a couple of questions. The first was, has Mr. Kozas had a chance to look at this? I don't know if Councilor Norton talked to him at all.
Yeah, the language actually came from him. I went back and forth with
Okay.
him quite a lot. And just to respond to what the chair just said, what Officer Wade just said, this really is about providing discretion, not about making you do one thing or another. You're the ones out on the streets and you have that sense of what's, safe or not. So I'd be interested to hear what else, what other, if you think a time restriction, limiting the time, removing a limitation on the time restriction would be helpful as well. I personally would be fine with that. Obviously, it's up to the committee.
Yeah, so going back to, I guess, sort of the second thing I was going to say about this, I think that if you do this kind of thinking process down, probably a little deeper in the weeds than we should go in this conversation, but if you're actually doing this, to Sergeant, I think everything Sergeant Wade said made sense to me, and I think it supports doing something here. But I also think that, I personally, I had my house renovated and had an addition put on some years ago. That took 9 months. The guy next door is renovating. It's going to take him 8 months. That isn't even new construction. And in the case of the 8 or 9 months I had, some of the people working here were here over that duration of time. The plumber kept coming back in and out. Some of the heating guys, the carpenter, sure, certainly. So you had a continuity, or at least it might have been discontinuous over the course of 8 months, but they were there a lot over 8 months. So that's just a long-winded way of me saying I think that they should have to come in after 4 months and say I need to renew it. And again, my concern there would be, and I would be welcome to statistics showing otherwise, in which case I wouldn't make this point, but that you get abuse in the system. You get somebody saying, "Hey, I need it for 9 months," when in reality they're really only going to be there for 3 or 4. So I would just be careful whatever we do, not to tip it the other way. But other than that, I think police having discretion on something like this makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Just real quick, speaking of abuse, if we do suspect somebody is, we do send one of our traffic officers out to make sure work is still being done, just to verify those things. Kind of like we do sometimes when people call for overnight parking consideration when they can't park in their driveway because they're having the driveway done in the middle of the winter. We do send somebody out to check on those. So we don't suspect a lot of abuse at this point.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Appreciate that.
I do too. Councilor Grossman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilor Markowitz just stated most of what I was thinking. I think it makes tons of sense to give discretion on this, and I'm happy to find the right way to do that. My experience, having just lived through a renovation project where I thought it was going to be out of my life in 6 months, and it went on for nearly 18, is that these things can and do drag on. And it actually sort of raised the question in my mind of whether we really want to let it drag on. I mean, there's some kind of incentive there, I think, to, keeping projects moving and keeping contractors moving. And so I don't know. I don't know what that implies for any change to what you're proposing. I guess what I'm just saying is it does make sense to me that contractors should have to keep checking, and it shouldn't just be an endless amount of time that projects can go on. Thanks.
All right. Any response, Councilor Norton?
Yeah, I don't have any data on this, but my sense would be that the ability to park in front of the street is probably the least of the criteria that cause a project to be extended or not. So I don't know that I personally I wouldn't worry about that aspect.
All right. My sense also is that neighbors will complain and police will be out to check whether work is actually going on if contractors are parked in front of the building. We have language in front of us. Down in the bottom of the agenda, having a quick look at it, it looks fine to me. Does anyone want to make a motion to accept the amended ordinance as drafted?
So moved.
Thank you. Councillor Lucas has moved. Any further discussion, or can we take it to a vote?
I just wanted to confirm, Madam Chair, if I may, like what I heard from Sergeant Wade seems to confirm that that language works for NPD. I also heard that Mr. Kosis reviewed the language and is also comfortable with it. I just want to confirm those two pieces before we put this to a vote. I'm relatively comfortable thinking that's what I heard, but
it's what I heard. Anyone have any? Yeah.
Yeah,
we are comfortable with this.
That is correct, Councillor Oliver. I worked closely with both Sergeant Wade and David Kosis on this language.
All right, great. That's all I really wanted. Thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging that perhaps silly question. Thank you.
One other procedural I just figured I'd throw out there for knowledge is when these contractors come in, they only get a permit for 30 days at a time. They do have to come in every 30 days to get a new permit. So we won't just issue 6 months at a time.
Got it. All right, are we ready for a vote? All in favor of the language as presented in our agenda, please say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? All right, I think we have actually passed something I can report out of committee. Thank you all. Now we have one final item. I'm just waiting for this.
Thank you to the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Norton. And I think this is probably your last appearance before PS&T. It's our last meeting. So
yes,
thank you for stopping by. Good to see your face.
I'm
sure we'll see more of you.
You probably have the cake in the committee room somewhere, but another time.
It was ice cream, but never mind. All right. Our final, and it's melted. And our final item, because we already heard 23623, is number 35123, requesting change in the overnight winter parking ban ordinance to allow folks who have permits to be able to park in city lots during snow emergencies. Councillor Greenberg and Downs requesting change in the overnight winter parking ban ordinance to allow people who have permits to be able to park in city lots during snow emergencies to begin this winter. Councilor Greenberg, are you here? No. So the discussion we had about this, people buy overnight parking permits in order, if they don't have a driveway or somewhere else to store their car, and are allowed to park in municipal lots. And then we have a snow emergency and they have nowhere to put their car because you're supposed to clear your car out. That gives our crews time to clear the lot. They're very often lots in our village centers for, used by folks who are shopping in the village center or have other business there. So they need to be cleared when the streets are cleared. And very often that can happen in the middle of the night. So the thought was, are there any other lots that could be used? Mr. Yo, do you want to address this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think you sort of summarized it. Speaking on behalf of the departments, the village center lots are very important for a variety of reasons, and it's not feasible to do separate plowing or to shovel people out and all that of out of those lots. I think as we discussed a while ago, we'd be willing to talk about more remote parking lots, maybe some of the larger parking lots. Even that presents a whole bunch of challenges and could, create some additional costs to the city that are not insignificant. But we would, I think we're willing to take a look at some of those lots and maybe take a row or something of them and allow people to park there. But that may not, may not be what people want. So it could be much further away from their homes and present some logistical challenges. So, it's a challenging issue, and I totally understand the frustration about it, but we really do need to be able to plow the municipal center, village center lots when we're plowing the rest of the parking lots and the dealing with the sidewalks and in the streets. So it's a challenge. We'd be willing to continue to look at it.
Right. And I think our discussion, which we had in preparation for this, was we'd love to be able to solve this, but it'll take some time to go check all the parking lots and see how all that works. Am I correct in that summation? Anyone else?
Yes.
Have questions, points of discussion, suggestions, data points that the administration might look at? Councillor Oliver, followed by Councillor Grossman.
Great, thank you again, Madam Chair. So again, this is something that we should try and figure out. I agree with that. I do wonder, like, I keep going back to something, and I don't know if it's germane here anymore, but when we talk about, sorry, I want to make sure I'm not stepping on myself here, but yeah, we have parking permits, right? Good. So does it make any sense for us to increase the cost of said permits to allow, to offset the cost of the plowing of the municipal lots? Open question for now, treated as rhetorical, I guess, if that's appropriate. But it does seem to me that there's a timing issue here as well, right? Because I mean, you can't get the cars off the street and into a lot when you have to plow the lot and the street. So there's going to be some kind of, crazy juggling act going on there. But it is something that I'm glad to hear the administration is happy to kind of continue to work through possible solutions, because as I've said before, let's not just trade one problem for another one. Let's see if we can fix it. And again, I'm really looking forward to being able to tackle all of these next term, whether or not I'm actually seated on PS&T or not. But yeah, no, this one to me is a bit of a head scratcher, but hopefully we can find a way to get this one done as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I have Councilor Grossman. Sergeant Wade, do you want to weigh in first? In case you have more data.
The only thing I was going to say is right now, the municipal lot permits, there is no charge for them. And this is definitely a big problem. Everybody who comes up for one says, well, where do I park when there's a snow emergency? We have no answer. So this is definitely, I'm glad it's being discussed, because it will make things in my bureau a lot easier if this is solved. So I do appreciate it.
Got it. Councilor Grossman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to ask if we could have a little bit more information about the order of magnitude, because I don't know that I fully understand how many permits we're talking about and the full range for which these permits are issued. I don't know if anybody can shed a little bit more light on that now, or if this is just information to gather as we work through this into the next term.
Sergeant Wade, do you have that roundabout numbers?
I'm actually waiting for that text to come in right now. I just texted Matt, who he handled out a majority of them. I would say it's in the hundreds. That's my guess. I'm just waiting for him to get back to me real quick. As soon as I get it, I'll let you know.
What are the range of reasons that we issue the permits? Like, who are the sort of typical parkers in this situation?
We get a lot down in the Northampton area, like Adam Street and Chapel Street fill up very quick. I think actually Chapel Street's already full. We get a lot for Austin Street lot, and we get a lot for Langley Road, the big parking lot in the center. We've started giving a lot in Lexington, the Lexington Street lot, which is over behind the Duncans in Auburndale. And then recently the Chestnut Street angle parking down near the depot by the Greenway. That one has started. He just got back to he says roughly around 200-ish. I would say it's between 2 and 250, usually for the year. It's usually a mad rush in November and December, and they start tapering off around February-ish when people start getting all-night parking tickets heavily. But a lot of it is on the north side, and those fill up very quickly.
Right. And we're going to see more of it where we have more units that come without any parking. There are some in Newton Center, and there are a number in Northampton and in Upper Falls, because those were all built before parking, or there's a whole apartment building in Newton Center that was built in the 70s without parking. Councillor Kelly, welcome, and Councillor Maliki, you're to follow.
Thank you. I've been here quietly listening, but I appreciate the welcome anyway. I was interested to hear Sergeant Wade talk about how many requests they get, and to actually put a number on it, 200 to 250 is a lot. Over here where I live on the very north side, closer to the Waltham edge of West Newton, I'm sure there would be a lot more if the Cherry Elm Street lot was in walking distance for the many people who live over here and have nowhere to put their cars, but it's too far to walk home in a snowstorm, I think. I'm glad to hear, not glad, I'm sad. I'm also glad to hear that you're going to continue these conversations into the next term. And one thing I would suggest we look at when we do that is how our neighboring towns, for instance, Waltham and Needham, are able to provide parking in their municipal lots and manage the plowing the next morning. I've spoken with the police chiefs in those towns. I have not done that in the past year or two, but to find out, like, how do we schedule the cleaning out of the lots while allowing people to park in them? Other towns and cities are doing it. I believe we could do it. I'm glad we'll have more conversation next term. That's not going to help people much this winter. I've been beating a dead horse on this for a couple of years, but I'm not done horse beating yet. So thanks for having the conversation, and a couple of items on tonight, and to be continued.
Thank you, Councillor Maliki.
For Sergeant Wade, are the permits for a specific lot, and do you have a sort of a table that shows how many spaces are in a lot and how many permits get issued for a lot? I assume, maybe I'm wrong, do you not over issue permits more than a particular lot has available?
Generally speaking, the ones we really keep track of, because it's very limited, are the Chapel and the Adams Street lots. Those we actually have numbers on. We just got the number today for Austin Street lot. We actually got it from David Kosis, and I don't remember what it was. But the other one that actually is very busy now that Matt just reminded me about is the Cherry and Elm lot. That one in the last 2 years has gotten busy. The exact numbers in the lots, I don't know. We do keep track of when they get the permits. They have to fill out a form with their name, address, phone number, and on there goes their license plate. So these are vehicle specific. And a lot of times people say, well, I have a guest coming. What do I do? Well, you park your car on the municipal lot, and then the visitor can park in your driveway. So it's definitely exact numbers I don't have right now.
But do you not issue more permits for a lot than you have spaces for?
I don't believe we do because we haven't gotten a complaint yet, but there's only 3 lots right now that we have exact numbers for, which is again, the Adams, the Chapel, and the Austin lots. The others are bigger lots, and we haven't gotten a complaint yet that somebody can't find a spot, so we don't have exact numbers on those.
Okay, and do people have to provide a reason why they need it?
No, anybody can get one. They just have to show the registration that shows they're a Newton resident, and also we need the plate, but there's no reason needed.
So you could be issuing a permit where somebody's household has 4 cars but only 3 spaces or something like that.
Correct. I've been up there, I think almost 4 years now, and I've never been told that I need to verify that they don't have a space to park. It's always just been, if they need it, they can get it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, that is our business for tonight. I need a motion.
I assume an NAN is appropriate
Yep.
at this point. Yep. Motion for an NAN.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you all very much. Vice Chair Markowitz, your last meeting. It's been great working with you. Thank you.
Congrats.
Great.
I think the rest of us who are on the screen return for more fun next term. Ms. Fairley, did you have one other thing to say? Your hand is up. And you're muted. There you
Am
go.
I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
I'm curious how, do the people who don't get out of the parking lot at 7 a.m. in the morning, how do they see that permit and how do they ticket it? The police, because obviously they have these exact hours of 7 to 7. It just seems like this is a little similar, as to, I know the parking lots are good for people who don't have a parking space, and that's why the people with disabilities can't take advantage of it if they can't walk that far. But I'm just curious how they determine ticket holders, even permit people at 3 o'clock in the morning. Are they the right people that have a permit in that parking lot? I'm just curious. I want to know how difficult it is for ticketing, because I feel like that's the concern about possibly making an exemption to the overnight ban for people with disabilities.
Jeannie, I'm sorry. I think I missed the first part of it. What was the first part of your question?
Are people ever ticketed that park in that parking lot without a permit or don't get out of there at 7 in the morning? How do the officers see the permit?
Well, again, this year we're using I can't remember the color. It's either yellow or orange. The placards that now go on their dashboard. And what we tell people is, again, our parking control don't come on until 8 o'clock. So we tell people you can park there till 6 p.m. and you have to be up by 8 a.m. And if you're in
7 and 7. Mm.
I know, but I can't tell people to get up by 7, but the ticketing doesn't start till 8. So, and then what we do tell people is, if you know what spot you're in, if you're in a 2-hour spot and you need to pay from 8 to 10, you can pay on the Passport app, and then you're paid from 8 to 10 or whatever it is to give them an extra 2 hours.
Right.
But it's a paid spot, and then they can do that. But we do tell them you can't pay after that again because you got to move your vehicle.
I guess I didn't mention that I'm not opposed to, if we had a process that you did get the license plate numbers for the folks who have a placard, so the officer wouldn't have to get out of his car or her car to see the placard hanging. That's all. So I still want to see this come forward, because every year goes by and nothing gets done, even though there's a lot of empathy. And these are people who can't park in the permit, the special parking lot. So I'm just concerned that we're not looking a little further and making a space for an orange thing on their dashboard as well as the placard or something like that, or just the dashboard orange thing, sort of a permit that extends to a few people on the street. I just want to make sure that I understand where I need to go on this, because I don't think it should be left in my position. I think it should be with the police who are ticketing and the city who has the overnight ban. That's just wanted to say
Yeah,
that.
Jeannie, in the lots, though, they can only park there when there's not a snow emergency. And
Right,
that's
right, I
what this
understand,
item
yeah.
is about. There's a snow
Correct.
emergency. Now you have to move your car. Where do
Right.
you move it to? It's not about, how do they read that? Because outside of a snow emergency, they're not patrolling
You don't
the
patrol those
lots at
parking
all.
lots. So someone could park there without having gone over to the police and gotten a little orange placard then.
And gotten a free permit and all of that. And yeah, and then it's,
So-
of course,
so
we're
there-
talking no nantum, so there could be a little rough justice if you don't have your own.
But I just thought there was some ticketing, even apart from the snow emergency. There was some ticketing about having permission to park there. That's all.
Of course, there's always that risk.
Okay.
If you don't follow the parking laws, there's always a risk that you will get a ticket. But I'm
Right.
not a gambler when it comes to parking tickets. I either decide I'm going to pay them and it's fine, or I don't park where I'm not supposed to be.
Well,
But
I
other people
think
have
they could-
other.
Yeah, I'm sure the people who really need it, even if they don't come through me and they go through the police, would be happy to give their license plate number out and still hang the placard. That's all I'm saying for the possibility of opening it up to people with disabilities, not needing to go through and ask for, quote, a reasonable accommodation, which is what I do all the time. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jeannie. And that does it for tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Counselor Down, do you have to take a vote on that? No action necessary, please.
She's not here.
Counselor Markowitz, will you
All
take
right.
a vote?
Yes. And that was, would you read the item? We're gonna nan it?
It was, yes, NAN by Counselor Oliver.
Okay.
351-23.
All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Abstentions?
Oh, she's getting back. They're coming back into the room.
That's right, item passed.
Okay.
There you are.
Way to go out, Chris.
Yeah, I know. One last time. And if the police are still on, Sergeant Wade, I don't know if the captain's on it. It's been a pleasure to speak with all great committee. Police and fire in the town have always been very responsive to this committee, and it's been a pleasure working with them.
You too, sir. Thank you.
We're adjourned.
You're muted.
No, I'm not.
I'm muted.
Can
I'm
you-
muted. Ms. Delaney, do we still need that motion, or are we all set?
One, I'm counting now who ran away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Council Lipoff not voting. NAN 6-0. Council Lipoff not voting.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Apologies for the rush.
Good night.
Good night.